Okay, this is Ginny with Tally and Belle. I have both of their videos pulled up, but any burning questions, like before we look at the videos, what is either the reason behind sending them, or is there anything you're particularly interested in discussing?
So in the last lesson, which was probably about a month ago or so, I guess now,
Mhm.
we were just checking in because it had been a few months since we had really, since we had had the last lesson, in person in the fall. And so mostly I want to make sure we're still on the right track and that kind of the plan that we started at the last lesson should still be continued.
Okay.
And then to see what kind of progress they've made. I feel like there have been some shifts. And so I just kind of want to get your feedback on that and make sure that what I'm seeing is really what's happening, and, and then whether or not I should change anything that we're currently doing.
Okay, because I think last time the biggest issue was they were sort of losing forward.
Yeah,
Let me share the screen. You want to look at Belle or Tally first?
it doesn't matter.
Okay. I've got Tally pulled up. Oh, it's an hour video. Okay.
It
So
is.
I'm going to just kind of push play. I have the sound turned off. And we can talk while we let the video play through. And if there's anything, I'll pause it if we get to a place where I want to point something out. It looks like you were
So
able to make more room, which is great.
yeah, I laid that jump down in the middle, and
Mm-hmm.
that makes this end of the arena much bigger. Belle is probably going to wander in and out of the picture because she's loose in the arena.
Okay.
Getting in the way.
Okay.
So this gives me more room than on the opposite end of the arena. And I have also done what we talked about last time, which was use the full length of the arena.
Mm-hmm.
Because thankfully all the jumps are in, so I can make a circuit as long as the footing is not snowy and all that fun stuff. But
So you can go closer and just walk with her and sort of use the rail.
yeah, so what I've
Right.
noticed, and I was going to bring this up in one of the Monday meetings, and then the weather was so beautiful, I went to work my pony. Um, but what I've noticed is that I feel like I can ask her for better balance from the inside rather than behind. Um,
Yes. And
and
that's
there,
because she's so unstable, like because she's basically lived with her back down and her head up. And so that has the long-term effect of destabilizing the axial skeleton, the skull, the spine, the pelvis. And she's much more forward and stable than the last time.
yeah.
And and so as long as you're not losing forward, you're always going to get more stability through the back and pelvis by working from the inside on a circle. So
So what I can do if she starts losing forward is I can use the full arena because the jumps are all far enough to the inside that I can still be to the inside of her, but making bigger laps. So the only reason I didn't do that today was because I knew I wouldn't be able to stay in the camera. But I wanted to make sure you could see enough of what was going on.
and you
She
have
did
Belle
this twice. Yeah, Belle is going to wander in and
photo
out.
bombing. Yes.
Yeah. So she stopped to pee twice and didn't. And then finally, a third time, she actually did go, which was interesting to me because that's never
And
happened before.
some horses will do that. They'll stop a few times before they pee. Um, they can also, some clever horses will use it as a strategy to stop. And other horses, I find that when you start working, really getting the back and hindquarter muscles working, thanks,
I
Bill.
think she's itchy.
um, they'll want to stop and rest in extension. Like they'll kind of park out, I think, as a way to relieve back muscles sometimes. And this is one
Interesting.
of the only hazard of having the loose horse is
Usually she's good.
having
Today
them
she's
block your path.
oh, please
Yes.
get out of the way. Like you have a whole other rest of the arena down here.
And she's literally standing on your path.
Yes.
Oh, but
I had
she
already
moves,
worked her too,
she moves for Tally. That's
a
hilarious.
little begrudgingly, and she kind of, Tally doesn't like it, but I kind of make her run into her. I'm like, get out of my way.
That's so
Like
funny.
I'm still the boss. I make her go around the circle, but still. Oh,
Yeah, so this looks much better. She's more rhythmic in her forward, which is all you, it doesn't need to be fast, but the rhythm, the steady rhythm of her walk tells you she's comfortable going forward. From there, you can keep refining sort of the feeling the inside rein, using the outside rein, adjusting the pressure to get more precise as you go. So the steadier and straighter the inside line is, the more precision you're giving to the horse regarding stabilizing rotation and developing the alignment from back to front. But if you're too precise, she easily could lose forward, or a lot of horses can lose forward. So I like that you're walking with her. The circle's really big. I see a huge improvement in her comfort level with this strategy, where she's not offering, I mean, she stopped the once, but she was easy to get going. She walked right through Bell, so that's pretty good. And she really is keeping her neck long. So the little bit of bending to the outside is, again, is just the instability through the pelvis and the back. When she falls with her weight to the inside front, you'll get slack on the inside rein, and you're doing exactly the right thing, pulling the hindquarters in, even if the head goes a little to the outside.
yeah, this is sort of a new, like this is kind of how she's been the last couple times, is more like this. And she's sort of like, she's a little bit consistent with this right now. Part of the reason this ended up the full hour, I wasn't trying to take an entire hour video,
Right,
but
right.
she eventually starts to loosen and starts, some head shaking, some more stretching, some shifting with her tail. So that was why I kept going. Because it was like I started seeing little signs that things were starting to kind of move around and to shift. And I was like, I can't stop now.
Yes. So she's a little unstable, and she's on the forehand, which both of those things for her are an improvement over high-headed or stopping all the time and not being able to move. So
there's her second park out.
And if she actually has a P, I wouldn't worry too much about stopping for something like that. It was the video before, you could just tell that the forward movement was so labored that it was just too challenging to her on that size circle or being that precise. And this looks much easier for her and more comfortable. So it's a great change in the right direction. So
and like I said, I feel like the changes she's making body wise are improvements again. Like we're getting back to kind of where we left off in the fall again.
Yeah. And as she's going, when she does start to use her hind legs a little better, like here where I just fast forwarded a little bit. Oh, and of course I finally hit the moment of P. Excellent. Let me go a little more forward than that. Okay, so now I'm up to about almost 12 minutes. And she slowed from her original speed, but it's still rhythmical. So when horses that are weak in the hindquarter begin to actually use the hind legs to start to control the stability of the whole body as well as the fall forward, they'll typically slow down. Slow is okay. That's her kind of getting the hang of really beginning to organize herself from her hindquarters. It's just the stopping or the loss of rhythm that you want, then you have to make an adjustment to how you're doing the work. But this slowing down as she gets about 12 minutes into it is absolutely normal. And you'll notice when she slows down, if she doesn't stop, at first she's very bent to the outside, but when she straightens her neck a little bit, she's not dropping the pole as much at this slightly slower speed.
Yeah. And I feel like there's been a little bit of a shift in the sort of range of motion of her legs. I feel like there's a little more reach forward, both in the hind and the forelegs at this point. Like she's starting to find more room to swing.
Excellent. Yeah, and she's really reaching with the left front in the correct direction. So she's definitely feeling more supple, not as tight, but more stable skeletally. Instead
Yeah.
of trying to stabilize with tight muscles, she's finding a much better coordination and she's finding the ease of it, which is very nice to see. So I'm going to go a little bit further. I want to see the other direction, but I want to see how she ends on this direction.
Apparently my internal clock of an hour and 30 minutes each way is getting pretty good because my phone is recording, so I can't check that. I'm like, oh. She also didn't, I don't think she really did it at all in this session where she would do the real hard head flip thing where she would throw her nose down and flip it out. She didn't do that pretty much at
Yes.
all.
No, her whole, even though she's got a ways to go with, getting off the forehand, the use of her head and neck is much steadier because her back and hindquarter are getting much steadier. So there's still a little rubbery neck, a little bending to the outside, dropping the pole. She might get heavy once in a while, or fall into long and low, but for her, this is a huge improvement. This is really good. And she's getting stronger in it, which is nice to see.
Yeah. So just more of this then is
Yeah,
really.
it appears to be really working for her. So what you can do is, like, on the size circle you're on, walking with her and not being too precise. She's maintaining forward, but she has to go pretty slow when she starts using her hindquarters. So that would tell me, number one, I can work on a circle instead of having to use straighter lines, which is more beneficial to getting that hindquarter and back stable sooner than later. Number two, I couldn't make the circle any smaller without losing forward. And I couldn't yet be too precise on those long reins without losing forward because she's steady, but she's slow.
Yeah.
So I would look for, on a day or as she gets more and more stable and more comfortable, what happens is, instead of having to go so slow, the hindquarters get more stable and they push better. So she'll straighten out her neck more often and she'll start increasing her speed as she feels more stable. And I would wait for that before getting more precise on the long reins, number one, and then making the circle smaller.
Okay.
So I would keep the size circle because the forward has been the issue. Ironically, she went from running away out of control to not going forward at all, which is normal.
Yeah.
That pendulum swing is normal. But she,
Oh, here's where we change.
okay. So did I miss the head shaking or what you were asking
No,
about?
she didn't do it this time. She
Okay.
had done it last time. She has this thing where she'll like throw her nose, like root her nose down really hard and like yanks me real hard. And she isn't doing that, which I
Okay.
feel like is a good thing.
Yeah. So what it is as you're bringing stability first in rotation, then to alignment in the spinal functions and from back to front, as the coordination of the spine and pelvis become more stable laterally, what happens is that tightness in the muscle that they were using for stability can suddenly let go. And that's why they fall forward into long and low, is because they go, okay, I'm stable left to right, but I can't control myself front to back. And if she's not being dramatic about it like she used to be, because when they first start to come out of extension and get more stable and release the muscles of the top line, or supple them, I should say, they fall violently forward. They pull on us, they root, they snatch the bit, they shake the head, they get chompy on the bit. But as you keep going, which is what you're doing, you can see the stability coming into her movement. It just
Yeah.
looks, it's slow, but it looks more under her control and more organized. So rather than lethargic, there's still some forward energy that she's doing a good job of coordinating, but she's still struggling with it. So when they quit ripping the reins and ripping the head forward, that's because they're feeling that control over their own body weight through the back muscles, through the hindquarter, through the skeletal stability. When they do that, it's not bad behavior. It's just they lose control
Yeah.
of their own body weight. So they
Yeah.
just violently fall forward. So if she's slowly falling forward, or she's getting, the neck a little to the outside, or dropping the pole, or a little bit long and low, all of those things, when they happen slower, show you that she's feeling more in control of her body through her back and hindquarter.
Yeah.
And a little bit slower this direction than she was the other direction.
This is the hard way.
Okay. So what you might do too is, with this more forward that you have to work with compared to last time, is start on the hard direction first. I think
Switch it.
now would be a good time to switch that.
Cool.
When you really have no forward, or the horse is really struggling, go the easy way first, right? And save the hard direction for once they're loosened up. But she seemed really comfortable going left and really thoughtful. So I would go to the right first and see if, while she's fresh before 20 or 30 minutes of work, if she can't work easier to the right at the beginning of the session rather than towards the end.
Okay.
Okay. But again, this direction too, she's reaching forward and inward with the right front leg. So she's feeling more kind of ability, or like you said, range of motion through the legs. The hind
Yeah.
legs are coming underneath her better, and the front legs are reaching in the direction of travel better. And she finds some good moments where, she kind of starts to maybe explore a little bit of lifting her back. It's not much, but it's, the not falling forward and not being in extension are good signs that there's the early stages of flexion of the spine or lifting the back.
Yeah. So then she does a couple head shakes, like, like loosening up, kind of like is what I was feeling that she was doing, was like, oh, hey, I don't have to like grip or hold or
Yes. And as the stability of the skeletal coordination gets better and better, you'll see all kinds of interesting sort of releases of excessive tension. It can be in the shoulders. Most visibly, it's in the shoulders and the neck. It'll happen through the back and the hindquarters as well. You might get a couple of odd missteps with the hind legs.
I think there was one of those in there, in especially in this direction. I think that happened at least once.
Yeah, because as you stabilize the midline with the long reins, and particularly on a circle like you're doing, the leg kinematics change. So, and that's going to affect all the muscles around the legs, but it can sometimes be a little like a chiropractic adjustment where the joints actually change a bit, or something has a sudden give. So I wouldn't worry about any of those things. And it looks like you're really past the most dramatic part of it. She's actually working this entire time in, for her, very good balance. Like, it's not good balance, but for her, it's a huge step in the right direction.
Yeah. That's what I was feeling,
Mhm.
that we were definitely back on the right track again.
So did she stay slow and steady like this most of the time, or did she stop more frequently on this direction?
What do you mean stop?
Like just quit moving?
She doesn't really. That one time a couple laps ago when she stopped, I also yelled at Belle
Oh.
to get out of my circle. And so she was like, okay, I'll just stop. I'm like, no, 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 you were doing good. No, no. So
Yeah.
we don't really have any of the halts in this direction. She gets a little slower, and like I noticed a little more sort of inconsistency in the rhythm of all of her legs.
Hmm.
Like I wouldn't call it a lameness, of course, but it's like her legs don't always move at the same rate. You know, it's not quite as rhythmic. She does improve though, which that's part of why this ended up being an hour, because when I went this, you know, I changed directions. It was like, oh, this is taking you a long time to find the same rhythm that you found on the other side.
Yes, and hence why it at when you can, it's easier to start with the hard side first.
Yeah, we'll switch to that now.
Yeah, but it looks like she just gets a little stiff or a little bit short on the right hind. So that could be
Yes, that's
why
what I was seeing.
she's a lot slower in this direction, is because that right hind leg might just not have the mobility, same mobility as the left hind leg. And when they feel a muscular restriction, or if it's related to the crookedness of the spine, they'll all go very slow. And the good news is, by slowing the pushing down, she's going to be able to equalize the leg stride length between the right hind and the left hind. So if the right hind feels to her muscularly restricted, or it's just not as comfortable, or it's not as stable, she'll have to slow down and resist the extra length of stride with the left hind, but she'll match the right hind.
Yeah,
Right. So it's hard to push a restricted leg to match the more mobile leg, but
that makes sense.
it's very easy to reduce the mobility of the mobile leg to match the stride length of the restricted leg. And that is what she will do, because you're helping with the long reins to level off the pelvis.
Yeah. In this direction, I noticed there's more head movement. So like there, she was just up and down a little bit. She licked and chewed, you know, or was working with her mouth a little more. I think I was probably yelling at Belle again. Most of the time I was trying to get Belle out of the way.
That's so funny.
Um,
Belle's right on the edge of
I
your
know.
circle. I'm just hanging here.
It gets worse in a little bit, I think. We had there's like two more times where she's like in the way.
That's
Um,
funny.
but there's more of the like exploring, and like I said, the mouth movements, even her tail is moving more in this direction than it was to the left.
Yeah, so that
So
indicates that you're getting changes in muscle tone. And with those changes in muscle tone will come instability. So as you're increasing the stability in the coordination of the skeleton, you're decreasing excessive use of the muscle. And both of those make little windows of instability in the process.
yeah,
So the head movement, she just is showing you in this direction, which you already know it's the harder direction, that this is her harder direction. She's less stable, less comfortable this direction.
yeah,
So I would start with it. And maybe if she looks like she's getting better, you could give this direction an extra 5-10 minutes to try to get it balanced out with the other direction. And if you start with it, you'll probably just have more energy to work with.
that's good.
Yeah, but she's definitely not as comfortable going to the right as she is to the left.
Yeah,
And if it continues to be kind of a really noticeable discrepancy between tracking right and tracking left, then I would, like, out of an hour, I might do 45 minutes on the hard side and 15 minutes on the easy side. Now, in that case, I would do my quick 15 minutes first to the
Hmm.
easy side. If you're going to split the time equally, or maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes difference, then do the hard side first. But if you're going to do either a full session or 3/4 of a session, really focusing on the harder direction, then just do the easy side quickly, 10, 15 minutes to warm her up, and then do the hard direction the rest of the time. So you
Yeah.
can kind of mix it up just depending on how she's doing with it. There's no rules, but oh, we almost have a long rein macrame episode. Ooh, we got 2 for 1. Belle goes, I'll get in the long reins.
She already had worked. That was what was so funny is I had already worked her. I worked her first.
That's so funny. She's bored. She's like,
Like
I got
she,
nothing to do. So I'm going to
I
move
think,
this along towards the end. If that's pretty much how it went,
yeah,
I'm
for
going
the
to
most
move
part.
it.
I think it gets a little bit better, but
So I've moved it to, there should be about 8 minutes left. So we're nearing the end. We're down. I like to see the last 5 minutes, the first 5 minutes and the last 5 minutes. And then if there's questions in between, but if she was just sort of basically maintained that steady, slow pace, you're golden. You don't have to go back to, because obviously this would be the direction where you would lose forward, most
yeah,
likely.
yeah.
And if she's not really losing forward,
Of course, she makes a liar out of me right
of
there.
course, yes.
Well, but again, this is 50 minutes in and she's
Right.
clearly working hard. So I wasn't as bothered by it. She was also really easy to restart, you know? Yeah. Apparently I should have worked Belle longer than I did, even
You're
though she got
getting
basically a full hour.
you're getting the stealth attack. That's so funny. Well, if she stays
Yeah.
in the middle, you can go around her.
I'm actually really interested to see what you say about her because she was funny. Like she had a lot of
She looks
energy
good.
in like a good way, not like
Yeah.
energy in a bad way that day. It
No,
was
and same
like,
with Tally. What I'm seeing is more forward, more energy. And of course, at the end on the hard direction, working around Belle, she gets a little fussy, but very consistent. Like she's just getting the hang of it. So at this point, I wouldn't change anything other than, address the discrepancy between the directions. Kind of watch that and play with that. But no, this looks really good.
yeah, I was very happy with it. And like I said, that was kind of my intention was to make sure that this was on the right track and that,
Yes.
you know, I didn't feel like we probably should change anything with her. But like tweaking to directions, which one I go first
Yes.
is helpful.
But I wouldn't plan. I love that you found this bigger area for a circle because the circle it works faster when you can work from the inside on the long reins compared to behind. Behind just isn't the same. It just isn't as supportive. There's more room for error.
Yeah.
But if you lose forward, it's a fine place to start. Or if the horse is panicking on the circle, it's a fine place to start. But I don't think you're going to get this circle any smaller anytime soon for her. I think
Which is fine.
it's about the right size.
Yeah.
And if she suddenly gets more forward, then for those moments, you could try standing still. But as soon as she loses forward, I would start walking with her again on the bigger circle. So you could play like to the left. It looks like it's almost appropriate to try standing still here and there, or making your
Or
inner
like
circle a little
winding
smaller.
down. Yeah. And then maybe winding back out. Like I could go around that one jump. That's kind of what I do with Belle. I think Belle's circle was a little bit tighter.
Oh my gosh, she's so funny. So instead of the cat or the dog in the video, we have a horse. wandering around the video, entertaining us.
Like I said, I feel like I should have worked her longer now.
That's so
The video is
funny.
only a half hour. And then when I realized it was only a half hour, I did work her, like it's like 38 minutes. So I worked her some
Mhm.
more, but then, I quit. And now I'm like, well, you probably should have had like an hour and a half or something, but
Yeah, no, Tally's moving along just fine. And if you gently continue with basically what you're doing, I would say you've got at least another 2 weeks of not making any changes other than start on the hard side first. And then maybe after 2 weeks, you could play with tightening the circle up a little and see how she responds. If she loses forward, go, okay, never mind. We'll try it next time.
yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's nice to know what I can test out to see how, like how much has changed, to put her back on a smaller circle and see
Yes.
um,
And you have like a good base to work from, because if she to the right where she's really slow, she isn't losing forward. That's your minimum speed, right?
that's helpful.
And then to the left is really where she's getting comfortable, where she offers more forward. So that's sort of the goal. To the right should look like what we just saw to the left before I would tighten up the circle. She should get comfortable enough that she starts offering just a little faster rhythm, a little more energy in the walk like she did to the left.
Yeah. And I'm sure at that point it won't look so wobbly. Like this does look a little wobbly and wiggly.
Yes.
So that'll just smooth itself out.
And the only thing you can do to equalize it is really, let me whoops, get to Bell, is more time. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't help to push her to go faster because she's finding that stability and equalization and lateral balance. And she's going to need to choose her own speed while you're
Yeah.
working on that. So it's really a time game to just give her more steps in the direction that's more of a struggle for her.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see what we got with Belle. She goes,
So
oh,
we're
and we're
starting on,
off. Yes, we
yeah,
have much more energy.
we're starting with a lunge, not on the long reins,
Ah, just to get her
um,
trotting.
just to get her moving. And I throw in a couple canter transitions, but it's only about 2 before she doesn't look good at the canter.
Yeah, so
Um,
she's a little excited about it still, but at least she's trotting and not bucking and trying to change direction. So that's a huge
so,
improvement.
and the cool thing is she's very responsive. Like, I
She
don't have a
obviously, and
problem. I don't have a problem managing this energy. Like, it's nice. Like, you know, um, and
so you asked for that canter?
yeah,
Okay.
I give her 2 clucks, and that's how I ask for canter, is with 2 clucks in a row instead of just one.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like offering this, and it's really lovely, but that's about as far as she'll go before like that right hind is like,
That's fine. The canter transition has the most value. Maintaining a bad canter has very little value at all. So just to get the transition that she says yes, and she gives you the transition in a couple of strides, is mission accomplished,
yeah,
because you get the swing of the like you get the rotation of the pelvis and the forward swing of both hind legs in the transition. They're going to be the most off their forehand only for the transition and the first couple of strides. Then they're going to tighten up and fall forward. So you get no benefit out of maintaining a bad canter.
yeah,
You get a lot of benefit out of just asking for the transition and being happy if she gives you anything. And the purpose of it, which you can now start to look at, is she gets a little excited in the trot. So you've brought up the forward energy beautifully, and the canter helps facilitate that. If you can allow her to trot and she starts to slow the trot and relax the rhythm a little bit, but not break to walk, that would be kind of my next goal. So what you're going to do is you're going to ask her like you did, trot. And if she starts off like she does in this video, she started off with a nice energetic forward rhythm, right? So I would save the canter transitions for when you really need them, because what you're going to start searching for on the lunge line, do you go both directions or you put her on the long
I went
range?
ahead and put her on the long reins because we're much better about trotting on the long reins if I don't go too long with just the
The
lunge
lunging.
line.
Oh, good.
So
Excellent.
yeah, I pick the trot back up as soon as I change everything over.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Then I will shut my mouth about what I was going to say on the lunge line, because do exactly what you're doing. Quick,
yeah.
high energy, get the energy jacked up, go to the long reins, and this is where you can start to balance the trot. When you're on the lunge line, if she wouldn't trotting on the long reins is more ideal. It gives them much stronger support for their balance than having to do it on a lunge line. On a lunge line, the only thing we can work with is transitions. So that's what I was about to explain, was how to play with it on the lunge line, but let's save that for another time. Because if you can get her trotting on the long reins, you're going to get a lot more stability through the pelvis and the back on the long reins than you will lunging. Lunging is if you lose all ability to trot on the long reins. Then I go, because the long reins are going to be more precise. It's like giving more aids, rapid aids for her lateral balance while she's trotting. We're still allowing her to choose her speed, fall on the forehand. There's lots of exit ramps. But if she won't trot on the long reins and we need to play with trot for her forwardness or just her body, then you go to the lunge line.
So compared to last time, I feel like she has more rhythm and I feel like her motion has just improved. Like this feels like it's happened in the last like maybe week-ish.
So are you done with the trot on this video now?
No, I don't think I
Ah,
think I
okay,
do
there you
ask
go.
for a few more transitions. She's starting to get snarky, which is funny.
She's always snarky about
I know.
trotting.
I know.
She just
Um,
tells us how much it sucks and how much she hates it.
I can agree,
But it's
girlfriend.
getting better.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like I said,
so
there's just a change in the overall quality. I can't completely pinpoint it. She is exploring more with her head. So I get some times where she's trying to put her head down, which for her is a good thing too.
mhm.
Um, and she's done a little bit of head shaking and, that loosening up and stuff as well. But like I said, there's just an overall improvement in the quality that I'm happy with.
Yes, I see that as well. Basically, you have more forward energy with both. There's a lot more rhythm in the forward energy, so they're not all jacked up. What you could try, because she clearly anticipates her lunging at trot before the long reins,
Yeah.
maybe mix that up a little bit. You can use that anticipation by putting her on the long reins straight away and asking for trot, and you might get more benefit out of that.
Okay.
She's going to rapidly figure out that it's harder. So if like you might only get away with that every other session. So because even before she was ready to trot before you even got organized. She goes, "Yeah,
Yeah.
I know the deal. I go out, I trot." She was nicely forward the whole time and even offered you canter. And it's good that you didn't do it for long, but she's struggling quite a bit with the trot on the long reins, which would be where you're going to get the most benefit. So try the next session, start in the long reins, get a little bit behind her, give her a tap, and see if she'll trot. Keep the long reins loose. So you're you have the outside rein, but during the trot, don't use it too much. So it's kind of a step between lunging accuracy on the long reins.
Well, that was kind of something I was going to ask, is if there was a way to sort of make that a middle ground so I don't have to stop and switch the whole lines around, because that gets complicated. And the way these lines are, I can't flip it over her back from a distance. Like, it won't go. So, because otherwise I would just lay it over her neck and just hold them together in essence. But like I said, I can't get it to go over her back while she's moving. I have to stop her. So, but yeah, starting out that way, that would be fine.
Yeah, I would take what you've built, which is her anticipation that she's going to trot for about 5 minutes when you first get out there, and use that anticipation. So when you put the long reins on her, keep the outside rein as loose as possible without going below the hocks. Move with her to encourage the forward a little bit, and see if she won't give you 5 minutes of trot in the long reins. And the less you can have the long reins there, you just don't want the outside rein to go below the hocks, and the inside rein, you don't want it so loose it hits the ground, but they can be pretty loose. You can just adjust the feel. You can go closer, you can walk with her, you can get a little bit behind her and give her a tap with one rein. You can play with different things, but I would see, and if she gets wise to it, then, and you don't get any trot because she's on the long reins, then go back to lunging, but lunge once or twice. And once you see her anticipate the trot again, start in the long reins.
Yeah.
Because she's sort of like, okay, when we start, we go. Yeah. So if you can put that loosely on the long lines, then that could really work to help improve the trot. And at the walk,
she's
go
stretching
ahead.
her head a lot more.
Yeah, any change in her neck use, like for her go-to is always head up, shorten the neck, right? So if she gets a little bit of bend to the outside, or if she turns to the inside, or if she fusses, tosses her head, roots on the bit, lengthens her neck at all, what that's showing you is that you're making great headway with stabilizing the hindquarters and the back. The more stable she feels back there, the more she feels she can release all that tightness through her neck and her back.
Yeah.
So to see her experimenting like that, and again, when they first start to release long-term excessive contraction in the top line, they do it kind of dramatically. They pull, they fuss, they chomp the bit, and they kind of slam their head down to the ground once in a while. But that will become more gentle. It'll balance out the more you keep going and keep helping with that lateral stability through the back and hind quarter. And again, she's keeping, oh, there's a little fly by, photo bombing from the fly. She's keeping a nice steady pace as well.
Yeah.
Slow, but steady.
Yeah.
You can work with that. Because there, I think you're nailing it. Her ears are kind of half back. She's really thinking, she's changing her posture quite a bit. She's not fixed in one specific posture. She's sort of, going back to her habit. Then she plays a little bit with lengthening the neck. Then she falls forward. The shaking side to side of the head is probably her feeling the muscles loosening up.
Yeah.
But this
she's made attempts at this at the trot, but I think it usually surprises her so bad that she stops. Like she'll go to throw her head down at the trot and then she's like, whoa, I can't do that.
I can't trot like that.
Yeah, yes. Which is fine. But she has started to do that at the trot now, which I wasn't getting before.
Great. And that's on the lunge line or the long reins?
On the long reins is usually where it happens the most. Which is part of why I try to jump back to the long reins as quickly as I can from the lunge line as soon as I have some forward.
Yes. And that's, you can play with that. I mean, lunging at the trot with those little canter transitions is better than no trot at all. So if you feel like you're fighting for trot, or she's pinning her ears and she's putting more effort into not trotting than she is trotting, go back to the lunge line for a little longer. But I would say even if you have to do that about every, I don't know, third session, I'd try trotting her in the long reins first.
Okay.
And she's kind of at that in between stage. It might work if you start off with the long reins, and it might not.
Would decarpentry be beneficial to her, or?
No, because she's up above the bit is the problem. Do you know what I mean? If you
She'd
use
be
the,
too stuck.
yeah, and any bit resistance on like two reins, because the beauty of the long reins is if they're up above the bit, you're going to have side to side rein pressure alternating one rein at a time. When you have resistance on two reins at the same time, it just gives them an excuse to stay above the bit. It
That
doesn't,
makes sense.
yeah, it doesn't encourage the change. So what you would have to do if you were to do decarpentry, the effectiveness of the decarpentry method with her would be a million circles, straight lines, circle, straight lines, circle, straight lines. So you change the path of travel rather than like you alternate the path of travel between straight and turning to have the same effect that you would have one rein at a time.
Yeah, and I don't, that would be too much.
It's
With
a
all
lot.
those jumps in there, I would not be able to
Yeah.
manage all that. And
Yeah.
one of us would run into something.
So if she got stuck in long and low, which I don't see happening, but it's possible. If
Anytime
she
soon,
got,
anyway.
yeah, and they can, but for horses that are stuck in long and low, the decarpentry works very well because the bit resistance kind of helps them figure out how to adjust their speed. And then
Yeah.
you play with straight lines and circles as a path of travel. But on the long reins, the circle acts as a braking mechanism to slow the horse down. So when you don't have enough forward on a circle, if they don't have a big impulse to push, it doesn't work as well. So that's the challenge of, but usually a high-headed horse has a lot of forward, but not always, because the pendulum swing, if they're really forward and high-headed, as soon as you exhaust that pattern and they decide that's not a useful way to use their body, they usually bounce to the other extreme like Tally did, and they lose all forward.
Yeah.
So then
And
you
so
have,
that's what I feel like I'm seeing with Belle is we had, for a long time, we really had almost no forward. And then now I have this really lovely level of forward where I can get her moving and help her find some flexion and some movement. And then we get to work on it at walk. And that's
perfect.
what's so funny is like, as curious as she was, like her older habit, when I turned her loose, because she was the one I worked first. And so when I turned her loose, for her to stay that close to us working and like be all up in our space, that's not her normal.
Yeah,
You know, and
she's
so that
usually,
actually, yeah,
that's a
she's just like,
good
I'm gonna
sign.
just go way over here and ignore you guys because I don't want to be a part of this. And for her to just be there and that nosy and, you know, all about our space, like that kind of makes me happy,
Yes.
you know, because like she wants to be there, like she's happy with that. So she gets really, she's snarkier in the other direction. So even though she's super snarky, she still apparently doesn't have that much of a problem with it. She didn't leave, you know, like.
Yes. Yes. No, I think her pinning her ears and, you know, her snarkiness, so to speak, is just her expression of sort of screaming, this sucks. I don't like it. It's too hard. I don't, you know, what's the point? All of that kind of stuff. She's just questioning thoroughly your,
Yeah.
you know, what
Do
you're
you
asking her
really
to
need
do.
it? Do we really have to do this?
Right.
And of course, I'm saying,
No,
yeah,
but
keep
at
going.
the walk, she's really playing with lengthening that neck. And that will bring, when they start to feel stable in the skeletal coordination from behind and in the back, that muscle release, that's just a dynamic, it's spontaneous dynamic release of excessive tension through the top line, it feels as good as giving them a massage. So then they seek it more and more.
Yeah.
At the trot, she might not be able to maintain trot because she just will be like, it might be sudden and she doesn't know how. So I want to give you another thing to play with her, which is the bulk of the time that you work with her, I think should be in the walk, on the long reins, on the circle, both directions. But if she won't trot in the long reins for say 5 minutes, you need at least 5 minutes of trot, right? You can throw in the canter. If her trot is a high-headed and energetic forward, you can skip asking for canter. It's not that important. And you can let her settle into the trot. Once she relaxes in the trot, she's going to stop. So your time on the lunge line could be another way to work with the trot or work with forwardness, which would mean instead of even thinking you're going to trot her on the long reins, spend a little more time trotting her on the lunge line, maybe do both directions, 5 minutes each way.
Okay. And then just walk on the long reins.
Let's see how this looks. Because what you showed before the other direction, it just looked like she wasn't going to really give you trot on the long reins. This looks a little better. It's still hard for her. Because straightness at first, if they are used to going into faster speeds, head up, back down in extension, then when you straighten it, you make extension impossible. That's what the long reins do. You make it very difficult for them to stay in extension. So then she goes, well, if I can't be in extension or in that use of my body, then I can't trot. Right. And it's hard with the long reins to keep asking to get upward transitions. It's easier with just one rein and a whip.
Yeah.
So what you could do is you could increase the time lunging only at the trot. Like try the long reins, like we said at the beginning when she's anticipating trot. But I have a feeling it's not going to work right now. It'll work later, but right now it might be tricky. And overall, you still want that time in trot, whether
Okay.
it's the long reins or the lunging. So on the lunge line, ask for trot. If it's zippy and energetic and high-headed, don't ask for canter. Just let her trot until she chooses to walk or stop. When she chooses, if she chooses stop, then go quickly through the walk, through the trot, ask for a canter transition.
Okay.
If she goes from walk to, or from trot to walk and easily back to trot, don't ask for canter.
Okay.
So
That makes sense.
the canter
Like
is sort
use
of
the canter to if she's not trotting easily.
think of the canter transition as a way to borrow energy. So if she's losing energy or pushing back, stopping a lot, fighting you have to work really hard to get her to trot, then the canter transition is a way to just get the energy level up. And for her right now, that's the main point of using canter.
Okay.
So if she's got good energy, leave her alone and see what she does on her way down to walk. If she goes walk, trot, walk, trot, walk, trot on the lunge line, but it's not, but she's trying, then you can leave her alone.
Yeah.
If she's starting to not go forward from the whip, if she's stopping a lot, coming down from the trot, or if the trot's like 2 strides, blah, 2 strides, blah, then throw in a canter transition. And then let her come down from the canter transition all the way to walk. And on the downward from canter, she'll be excited at the trot. Then the energy will kind of reduce while she's trotting. And then when she chooses the walk, she'll have released all of the anxiety about the canter or the trot. She'll also lose the trot. So kind of the upward transition builds energy, the downward transition builds calmness, and you can play with upward and downward transitions to balance the energy of the trot and help her. That's how you use transitions on the lunge line if you can't get them trotting on the
Yeah.
long lines.
She's much easier to get into the trot now than she was a month ago.
Yeah, and it may be only another month of lunging, but I would start, like, I wouldn't cut off the trot as early as what you're doing. I understand your purpose for doing it, and it's working. But she's showing when you're asking for trot, you're having to really spend a lot of effort, and she's not giving you back a lot of effort, which means you're losing what could be a better walk trying to get trot on the long lines.
Okay.
Now, if you start with trot on the long reins and no lunging, maybe it will work. That's my first suggestion.
Yeah.
If she figures out, oh my God, I'm on the long reins, I can't trot, then go back to lunging first, but do 5 minutes each way on the lunge line. Let her break to walk on the lunge line and start to balance that energy of the trot between, like, breaking to the walk is I'm finding calmness moment. So if you have too much calmness, you need a canter transition.
Yeah.
Right? If you have too much excitement, you need a walk transition. So that way she doesn't learn to maintain the trot only in an excited state.
Yes.
You really want to balance that energy between calm and forward. And you've got the forward built up. So those would be the two ways I would approach it. Okay. And I'm hopeful that if you start with her trotting in the long reins, I might even do one direction no, she's pretty good about trotting on the second direction.
Which is interesting because this is her harder direction. And I think some of the snarkiness is also her wobbliness. Like she can't.
Yeah, she's just telling you it's hard.
Yeah.
And so.
But she's a little more willing in this way, which is interesting. It's still not easy, but.
Right. So you could try starting with the trot in the long reins, try to get 5 minutes of trot, do the rest of the time at the walk. Then when you switch directions, try to get 5 minutes of trot in the long reins the other direction. No more than that, because the benefit to her balance is where you can be the most accurate, which right now is the walk.
Yeah.
So still spend the bulk of the time at the walk because she's playing with the use of her back, her neck. She's steadily forward, but she's pretty slow.
Yeah.
So that usually indicates getting trot work on the long reins is not going to be easy. But if you don't even bother to try to get trot on the long reins, you could, extend the lunging time a little bit and play with upward and downward transitions on the lunge line, both directions. Then finish your session with walking both directions.
That would be a good thing to play with. And I think mixing up those two will probably help her.
I have a sneaky suspicion that from what I'm seeing on this video, for probably the next 2 to 4 weeks, she'll do better on the lunge line at trot. And I think you'll struggle to get it for very long on the long lines. Sorry. I had a tickle in my throat.
I am pleased with even though we're not getting as much trot as would be optimal at this point, I am still super happy with how much she is exploring now.
Absolutely. And that's actually that little bit of trot you did at the beginning is what's keeping the forward at the walk while she's struggling to work through tight muscles or rearrange her coordination or play with her neck use. All of that forward you did in the beginning is what is keeping the slow but steady pace at the walk.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm suspecting that you're going to just need to do the trot work on the lunge line first, both directions. And then I would do like tally while she's still fresh, do the hard side first at the walk.
Okay.
Yeah, it was easier for
That was a
her to
good one to look
trot this
into.
direction, but
Yeah.
she's less stable this direction. Yeah. So, but really good improvements with both of them.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm very happy with the shifts they've made, and it's just been in the last like week or two that it's like, wow, something is different and better. And I'm not exactly sure what, but it's definitely better.
Yep.
So I think that's probably the third or fourth session we've done since the last time we did a video.
Oh,
So
good. That's very good. The fly was back.
it was exceptionally warm that day. That was kind of the other reason I didn't do too much fast work with hers, because it was a lot warmer that day than it was some of the other days. So.
Yes, of course, you have to factor in the weather. But if there's a nice, cool spring, windy day, that's a great day to work on trot.
Had lots of those.
Yes.
Some of them to the point where I don't think I would even want to go out because it'd be more like flying a kite.
No, I think both of the girls would surprise you. I think because you, especially like on a day where the weather is going to make them a little higher or more anxious, I love those days for these kind of horses because I go, I might even get 15 minutes of trot work in before they settle down. Because I would, on a day like that, rather than flying a kite, put them on the long reins.
Yeah.
And then you actually channel all that extra energy into getting more changes.
Yeah.
So I welcome days like that for horses that don't have a lot of forward because you can put them in more support and not lose the forward.
Yeah.
Right. And the long reins work best on scared, fast runaways. They work really well. It settles them right down.
Well, you just stand in the middle of the circle and hold on, and then that's about it.
Well, you channel that movement. You
Yeah.
just are channeling it between the reins.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like the progress with both of them. And the long reins, oh my God, they can just be so tedious for so long because you're working on the whole axial skeleton and you're working back to front. And you can feel like you work and work and work and work and see very little change. And then what feels like all of a sudden, the body just shifts into being more comfortable with a new coordination. And on the other side of it, after all that tediousness, you get phenomenal changes.
Yeah. And that's where I feel like we're hitting that spot again, where now we're getting some really big changes. Like I would almost say that this is a hair better than where we were at the last lesson in November. Like this feels slightly better than that point. And we had regressed.
Oh, from the last video?
No, from November. The last time you saw them for their last lesson,
yes.
in when you were here in Maryland in November.
No, this is better than November.
Yeah. And it's like I said, we made the tweaks when we did the last video lesson. But now we're at a point where like we've been able to fix the regression, and now we've jumped up.
Yeah, and it's never really a regression. All
Yeah.
you did was what was working in November ceased working. And that's usually because we affect changes, but then the body needs an adaptation.
Yeah.
And so just the last time you probably did the work very well, got changes in the body, but in November they were more forward because they were more wound up. And as soon as they relaxed, because you were being precise on a small circle, they go, oh, I can't move. I no longer have any adrenaline to keep me going. Right. So that's more authentic because they're on board with you. You're not just managing anxious energy. They're actually thinking and working with you. But the side effect of that is, I think this is way too hard. I'm not going to move.
Yeah.
So
And
you
now we're
lose
getting like an authentic offering of
genuine forward
Yeah.
energy.
forward energy that's not uncontrollable or out of control at all. Like
For
nowhere in
them.
there did I feel like Bella was ever out of control. You know,
No,
like,
and that's what I'm seeing in their movement is the beginning developmental stages of self-control.
yeah,
That's what you're looking for. So when they resist going forward or they're going forward a million miles an hour, that's a lack of self-control or lack of self-carriage. So because the long reins primarily act left to right on the lateral balance, we just need them to propel themselves forward at any speed. If it's a lot of speed, the long reins get easier, not harder for us. If it's not a lot of speed, we have to get more creative, which is what
yeah,
you've done. And the steady rhythm, even though it's slow with both horses, is self-propelled forward motion. So they're beginning to think about balancing that braking and pushing and controlling their body weight much better, which is the side effect of the lateral stability.
yeah. And in the process, it's nice that they are that I don't have to like super focus on them, because then I also get some time in there to think about me and where I am in space. And I can observe that when I do well in my own body, then suddenly they make improvements. So like we're also at that point where you know, like they're beginning to respond as much to me as well as to their own bodies. They're like, oh, hey, well, if you're in alignment, then maybe I should be in alignment. And
So they're picking up on the more subtle
yeah,
stuff.
we're
Yes.
getting to a point where we can have some subtle conversation.
And that is a sure
Um,
sign when the horse can follow the more subtle aids. It's a sure sign that they're developing self-carriage and their balance is better, their stability is better, everything's getting better. So I just went back to look at the trot again real quick. And she comes out raring to go.
but still, again, like not
Yeah.
unreasonable. Like,
So no, it's not unreasonable at all.
yeah,
It's actually just her anticipation of
yeah,
the routine. So that's what I mean, that you can use that anticipation to your advantage by starting in the long reins.
yeah,
But she has nice forward. It's not, it looks like it could be enough to work in the long reins, but it doesn't last all that long. Do you know what I mean?
yep,
She's got a good forward rhythm. So this is what I would want to see. I wouldn't need to ask for a canter transition if I have that trot.
okay,
I would just let her go around and let her work out on the lunge line without support. Because she's got a nice forward energy at the trot, when she relaxes a little bit, she may find a better trot.
okay,
So the upward transitions are going to add excitement, add energy. Doing nothing or letting her trot until she breaks to the walk is a way to let her explore various uses of her body during trot.
okay,
And she only needs to walk for a stride or two. It's not that you have to let her walk a lap in between trot transitions, but just fully transitioning down to the walk. Sometimes I'll see the best moments of trot are the last couple of steps before they break. That's just where they start to find their balance. And then they go, oh,
yeah, I can do this.
I can't
Yeah,
maintain it.
yeah,
So then I push them back up to trot. And when you ask for trot, if she goes off like this, don't bother asking for canter. Like there, she slows the trot, but she's not breaking the trot,
yeah,
right? That's ideal. Then if she let go of her neck at trot, she would probably break to walk. There she did without letting go of the neck. So when she slows the trot, you know she's going to break to walk. So allow the walk just a couple of strides, bump her back up to trot. and see if you can just play between walk and trot. And if she starts really losing forward at the trot, throw in some canter transitions, but hopefully she doesn't.
Okay. That's
But
cool.
I suspect even if you started with the long reins, like she's settled down. Where were we? That was under 3 minutes,
Yeah.
right? So from the time you started
And I even had canter transitions in there.
and you had canter transitions in there, you're done. Let's see. You might be done in 2 minutes with her. Let me go back to 2 minutes and see where we're at. Okay, so at 2 minutes, she's still trotting along, but I think this is where
There it
she
goes.
winds down.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so 5 minutes is going to be a lot. Walk, trot, because as soon as she slows down, you're at the 2:15. You're at 2 minutes and 15 seconds, and she's like, I'm good. So that's not nearly enough excitement to put her in the long reins at the trot.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
If she were just trotting steady and excited for close to 5 minutes, you could probably stick her in the long reins easily. But I think what you're going to have to do is build up her capacity to trot for 5 minutes each way, which is 10 minutes of trot, right? And I think the more walk trot transitions you do, the better. So save your canter transitions for when she's really kind of either pushing back, going, I'm not going to trot anymore, or for when she gets way too, like, really just, if you see her trying, the trot doesn't have to be fast. She just has to like try,
Yeah.
right? But when you
Yeah.
see her sort of really getting lethargic again, that's when you want to put in a canter transition, but not too many in a row. Kind of use it, let her play with that energy. When the energy dissipates again, use another canter transition.
So starting on the lunge line, would you say start to the left first or to the right first? I think I had been going to the right because we talked about using, starting out on the weaker side and kind of getting that moving and out of the way. Would you still do that on the lunge
Yeah,
line?
yeah, I think so.
To do 5 minutes right, 5 minutes left, and then walk on.
And then do your walking on the long reins.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because I can't recall right offhand, but I think when we looked at her movement last time, she's very short on the right hind.
The right is definitely the side she generally struggles on. It's interesting that the left has some other things that are starting to show up now.
And it's not uncommon for them to switch what we call the hard side. That will go back and forth, especially as you change balance. But for now, I would say still start her to the right. But like that trot that she has going now, I would just, if you could get 5 minutes of that or a little bit slower where she could relax, maybe
Yeah.
lengthen her neck a little bit, find a little bit more controlled rhythm. That doing that both directions, building up to 5 solid minutes of trotting would be really beneficial for her. Because in the trot, they don't use the back muscles as intensely as they do at the walk. So straight on a circle is very intense work for the back muscles, which is like for Tally, it's good because she's so unstable, right?
Yeah.
But
The
for
going
Belle,
faster for her would only exacerbate the instability at that point because of her gaited issues and stuff.
yes. And it's like she's got 8 legs. So working her back muscles hard really helps her become more stable.
Yeah.
Belle is stable, but she's stable through muscular tightness.
Yes.
So you really want to see that loosen up. But working her at the walk on the long reins will help with releasing all of those patterns of tension, but it also makes the back muscles work very hard. which can kind of make them retighten if they get fatigued. So the trot work for her, the reason I would recommend 5 minutes each way on the lunge line is to really as a tool for letting her start to release all of that excessive tightness. So if the trot gets too exciting in order to get forward, you don't get the benefit of the back muscles really not having to work.
Yeah, that
Because
makes sense.
they're working, but they're working the wrong way.
Yeah.
So by playing between kind of the reiterating, settle down, calm down, you can break to walk, or amp it up, girlfriend, we're going to try a canter. There's a huge variety of tempos and stride lengths and miles per hour and postures in the trot between walk and canter.
Yeah.
That's what you want to explore with her. And any little bit of lengthening her neck is helping the back muscles release some of that excessive holding.
Yeah.
And I think that would be easier, at least for the next 2 weeks, to do on the lunge line than the long reins. I think even to the left where she was more willing to trot for you, you had to really kind of push her to get the trot, and she didn't
Yeah.
hold it really very long.
Yeah.
She needs to hold the trot long enough that she explores in the trot.
Yeah. Well, I started seeing the exploration, but I think it was so surprising to her that she couldn't keep going. It was like, whoa,
Yeah.
what is happening?
Yes. And
I still haven't gotten over that hump yet.
yes. Oops, internet connection is unstable. Well, it's a good place to end, but good progress, really good progress. And I think making just a few of those little adjustments should bump them along even more.
Good.
So let me stop the share. There you go. Any other
Cool.
final questions?
I don't think so.
Good work.
For the girls, I think they're doing well. Yeah, I worked Storm earlier in the week, but I didn't set up the camera, and he's kind of missed a week or two here and there, but so I haven't had as much chance to work with him, but we're still going along. So
Okay, well, let's stop it there because I'm losing or freezing a lot. So let's stop it there.